TLC group of companies, all of our friends, referral sources. It is an absolute pleasure to be here today broadcasting to you. This is a really exciting day for me. I have a friend of mine who, I've known for several years now, and you've seen some of my trailers, is just a true Canadian icon. His background and his entrepreneurship is legendary. With me today, I have Mr. Jim Treliving, and a lot of you know Jim as the chairman and owner of Boston Pizza International. Today they operate almost 440 some odd restaurants between Canada, US, and Mexico. And it was funny, they started their business. Jim bought his first restaurant in 1968, was raised in Verdun, Manitoba, and spent 8 years as a RCMP member. So to look at the sort of trajectory of Jim and his long-serving partner, that built this incredible operation is amazing. He's a best-selling author. One of the books is this book here, the Decisions. I've just reread it a couple times over the last short while preparing for this. He's also a speaker, investor. He is the longest running dragon on the CBC hit series, The Dragon's Den. And he's also invested in dozens of businesses over the years in multiple sectors, including consumer services, real estate, property development, manufacturing, and retail. And I think lastly, and probably most impressively, is the good work that himself and his wife, Sandy, have done, over the years. Their charity work has been incredible. They're huge advocates of mental health, of the Boston Pizza Foundation, and several other charities. They've raised almost $30 million, with them and their group. And he's also an inductee into Canada's Walk of Fame. And he is a recipient of the Order of Canada. Holy smokes, Jim. Good morning.
Good morning, Gary. Good to see you, partner.
It is. It's so great to see you, Jim. It's very interesting times for us. I know you had just said to me that you've been home now for, would you say, almost 2 months, and it's the first time you've been home like that in 40 years. How are you making out?
I'm hanging in there like everybody else. I think we're getting a little, I think I say it from the old police days, confined to barracks for this length of time. But when I was in training, we were never allowed to go home or do anything else. So we were confined for 10 months of training. So maybe I can last out for 10 months, I hope.
Yeah. Well, the good news is it looks like we are slowly, starting to see some, back to work plans, which is good. I mean, obviously the COVID crisis came completely out of nowhere for all of us, and has had serious impacts, not only obviously the devastation, with sickness and deaths, but a huge impact on our businesses. And you with Boston Pizza International, I mean, you have certainly been in the eye of the storm. The restaurant industry was certainly one of the hardest hits. How's everything going? How are you navigating through that? I always say it's important to stay positive. What are you doing, and what is the company doing to kind of stay positive? And how has the last couple months been?
I think the biggest thing, Gary, we've been fortunate in our business that we've been takeout and delivery for ever since we've been in it. And I've been in this business now for 46 years. And when it was a small restaurant chain, and it was like 3 stores. I was the third store that they opened, and it was a great family that they owned 2, and I bought the first one. And it's amazing when you look back at it, and when we talk about this and the growth and the simplicity of the business. But a lot of it was, when we started, was just surviving. That was, and we were doing takeout and delivery as a sideline. And, we look at 60 some years later, 56 years later, that all of a sudden we're back into the same thing. So we've been fortunate in that sense to keep our restaurants open and deliver to our guests. And that's a big thing for our franchisees. And remember, we're a franchise company. So our franchisees are being spectacular. I can't say enough for them. And and the team I have working with me, oh my gosh, I'm glad I had the team that I'm going with right now to go through this. It's a tough time.
Yeah, it's incredible. And you know, a lot of that is, you know, I always say the number one job as a leader is to lead by example. And you and I spoke earlier today and you were talking about, I mean, you know, you guys are connecting more than ever before as a group. And I think you said last week you had 350 some odd franchise owners, you know, on a Zoom call. You know, and that's incredible. And I often say to people that through the most difficult periods, that's typically where you see entrepreneurs rise to the occasion. Um, you know, but it requires some grit and some resiliency and some leadership. Can you sort of comment on that at all, Jim? And what does it take, and where do you find that grit and leadership from? Funny how that works. We were just talking about, you know, in business, obviously it's times like this that brings us together, and you know, we have to really sort of, you know, find our grit and resiliency. And you've been knowing through that because obviously you've gone through many ups and downs over the last 47 years.
Yeah. The biggest thing, Gary, is going through these things, you're going to learn something on the way out. And when you're getting through it. And I think the thing is to stay positive. I just can't say enough about the hardest thing in the whole business is staying positive. We are going to get through this. We are going to get out the other side. And this is what we have to keep reassuring and talking to our franchisees about, because that's what we have to do.
Yeah, and that's you know, and the most important thing now, more than anything else, anyone out there in business today is just staying connected. And you've talked so much over the years about, you know, being connected in relationships, and you know, it's been a huge part of your business.
Well, I think a huge part of this too is the fact that in our kind of business, I had to realize that, you know, that we were dealing with people every day. And so if you're not a people type person, you this doesn't work. And I think the biggest thing with me was I want my franchisees to know what's going on every day of the week. And through my people that are working with me and my team, as I call it, it's not an I, it's a we. And it's not me, it's them and all of us. And we're no different. I put my pants on the same as they do and their skirts on or whatever they go to work. And we have to, this is how tough we have to be. And I take, for example, one of my best franchisees, and I say this very seriously, she's gone through absolute crazy times. She has our stores in Fort McMurray, Alberta. And, you know, when you sit back and you talk to what they've gone through, and this, I said to Linda the other day, I said, you know, Linda, I don't think there's anything else. You've been through fires, you've been through pestilence, downturn in the economy, then you go through a flood on top of all this. I mean, what else is out there? You know, and that's, to me, is the resilience and talking to her, and she's positive. If you can imagine, she's a very positive lady at the end of all this. So that's what it's all about.
Yeah, it's interesting. We all have a choice, right? And we can either, you know, panic and batten down the hatches and try to ride through this, or else we can, you know, go the other way and look for the positives. And Alberta in general has just been, you know, through an incredibly difficult time. Jim, so we talk about your business, and as I said, you know, the food service business has been really affected. What are you hearing about, you know, getting back to work and opening, and what is business going to look like over the next sort of 3 to 6 months for you guys?
Well, I think the biggest thing is we're going to be seeing it open slowly, which I think is a smart move. And the way they're doing it, and they're doing from province to province. It's not one serves all. I think that's a smart move too, because British Columbia is not near as bad as, say, Ontario or Quebec. And I've talked to our people yesterday in Nova Scotia, and the hardest thing is a couple of our franchisees have franchises in Nova Scotia, but they can't go to New Brunswick, and yet it's an hour drive to a store, but he can't go across the border. So, you know, I think we'll slowly open. I think the sad part about this is that we're going to lose some small entrepreneurs that started out probably 6 months or a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, and just getting going, and they got banged with this, and some won't survive.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I
So that's
agree.
the sad part. But I think we may lose some stores even with us because of the fact that there's some of our people are scared, you know, and we keep reassuring them that this is part of the deal. But, you know, most of our, I would say 95% of our stores, we've closed a couple of stores where they're two within a couple of miles of one another, and they're owned by the same person. They've amalgamated their takeout and delivery, which is fine. But they would be reopened when we do. So.
Yeah, no, makes sense. I want to jump to sort of some of your, you know, your book obviously was a great book, and it was all about decisions. And, you know, it's funny because the one thing we can control is every decision that we make. But you had a couple of quotes in there, and I want to read them so everyone gets them. I thought it was incredible. It really resonated with me. You said, "I'm emotional about work, I'm practical about money, and I am instinctual about people. In the book Decisions, you talk about making work decisions with your heart, money decisions with your head, and people decisions with your gut. Do you want to expand on that, Jim, and maybe, break it down? Because I mean, that just encapsulates it so simply.
Yeah, well, I'm a very simple person, Gary. That I think that's how we were brought up in the prairies. But I that's how I felt and how I feel. You have to look at every situation in a where it's being come through to me is on Dragon's Den and places like that, where somebody's coming on to pitch a brand new business, and you listen to this and you think, would I want to be in business with this guy? That's that person, not so much guy, but this lady. She's standing there, she's doing really well on our pitch, but will she listen to me? Can we talk about that? So I think that's the decision making that I look through, and there's the three things I do with it. It's an emotional thing too. For some people, they'll break down on it, on looking at a deal. They're so enthusiastic. That makes me feel that they're all in. They're going to do this. So those are the ways I make a decision. I'm not saying it works for everybody, but that works for me in a big way.
Yeah, no, and I love that, right? Because when it comes to people, it is your gut, but money decisions with your head and with logic. And, I just found that was a really, really powerful statement. Talking about Dragon's Den, wow. Is it 13 seasons now?
15 if we ever get to shoot it. It's 14 done, and
14 done.
And we're looking at dates for 15.
What kind of experience has that been for you?
Unbelievable, to say the least. Never thought the show would last more than a year. Any of us who were down there at the time, and I go back to the days of Herchebeck and O'Leary were there, and we've had some great changes across. Everybody's moved on to different things, and we've got some brand new people, and it brought a whole bunch of new things to the table. And I think it's just been a growing thing for me. It was a whole bunch of things to see at different businesses coming in. Some I had no clue about when it came to techie businesses, and I'm sitting next to a young lady now that she knows more about tech than her finger than I know in my whole body. So she, those are the learning things, and I think it's a learning day. That it's a bad day if you don't learn something new, even through this time.
Yeah, is there one or two pitches over the years that really stand out that you just go, oh my God, or one or two businesses that really stand out for you?
Yeah, well, I've had two major ones that I think are really great. One was that went way back and come on the show called Holy Crap, and that they did really well on their own. The other thing was Velifix, which is a company that's done really well, and then Steep Tea was probably the biggest one so far. And there were a couple out of Hamilton, and we talked about this lady coming on and her husband, and I looked at it, and Chili and I both went into that. David Chilton and I both went into that.
Yeah.
We're still in there. We're still having a good time. And Velifix is the other one that is more. It was a franchise operation. They didn't know which way to go. They were going, do we do corporate? Do we do franchising? They're now one of the busiest companies I've got across the country right now.
Yeah, and of course, and of course, also, and you were working with us for a lot of years, Kevin Cochran, who obviously came from us with Enriched Academy. With Enriched Academy, I know he's got a kick out of you, and I know you've gotten a kick out of him over the years. Right, so
him was how we met.
You got her, yeah, absolutely, many years ago, and you were so gracious with all of your time, and man, they're still rocking and rolling today, Jim. They're doing really well.
I think Kevin's one of the best, and what a guy, as we both know, that he can do a pitch really well. And he convinced me for sure that he was.
Oh, and he's so tenacious, right? His follow-up is absolutely relentless.
And Bruce Coxon and I were involved in that one. Bruce was, we just have some laughs over that. We'd be talking at university. I never graduated from high school, and here I'm talking at university. That was really something else.
Yeah, that's so true, isn't that? He's still doing that.
Yeah.
One of the things, that I really like and appreciate, I believe that when it comes to business, the less complicated you can make, the easier it is to understand, the more successful you're going to be. And you talk about simplicity as being the key to success. Simplicity in when it comes to business, in what area specifically, or what message can you give us about just trying to dumb this down and make it as simple as possible?
Well, I think, it started with my business again, going back to how I grew it. and with the people we had. And it wasn't just me, it was our whole team. And I think, I remember the first day being there, and the most simple thing was we're putting a bunch of flour in a bowl and throwing some water into it and a few other odds and ends. And the next thing we knew, we had dough, and we were nothing more simple than our business was, to make a pizza. And that's how we started. And we kept that business pretty simple. You know, you look across all our units and franchises, and all of my franchisees came from other businesses, or they had raised money to do things, or through family or whatever. But it was the simplicity of the business that made the growth. And this is how we can do it, and we can do it properly, and it's fresh and it's new, and it's not something that, you know, it's complicated. It's just, if you follow the system, it works. And that's the hardest part in this business, is making sure you follow the system. And you got to keep changing. So the changes are not massive changes. They're simple changes that you add to or take away from. And it's what the customer wants. What was your customer looking for in the first place? So that's why we've kept it simple. And I've looked at it in investments in different businesses I've gone into, like the Velofix, fixing bikes, like Kevin's deal, you know, talking about how he has done with his business, and the same thing what we did with Steve Tea. They started the same way. They come in with tea packages, tea in from China and fruit, and mix it and come up with stuff like this. It's a simple business. And I think that's why, if you look at a lot of one-off restaurants that are around, a young entrepreneur starting out, I don't care whether it's a restaurant or it's another business, or whether it's an IT business or whatever. Right. It's so simple. Who would have thought we would be doing this, what we are doing today? And it had somebody sit down and say, why can't we do this? If I can see one person on a phone, why can't I see 50 or 100 or 200? Yeah. So that's what, and it's all simple. It's pretty simple stuff. And it's these times, and I swear that our ingenuity comes to the forefront. Yeah. And you're going to see a lot of new stuff and a lot of different things that are going to work, but we don't have to, you know, do what we're doing, but keep it simple.
Yeah. And I really want to dovetail on that comment, because I, you know, just kind of translate it for our own business. You know, Warren Buffett, who we're going to talk about, you know, a little bit later on. You know, I know, I've met Warren several times, doesn't invest in anything he doesn't understand. Right. Doesn't have a computer on his computer on his desk today. It's about relationships and
Gary, he still has the first food company he bought into. It's called Dairy Queen.
Yeah.
And he is the owner. I mean, nothing's more simple than ice cream or pizza.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I always say to every entrepreneur, I mean, you know what, like so many of us want to, you know, they want to get the latest and greatest in the tech and all the technology. And they always say, I need better systems. And actually, I've said many times, what they actually need is better habits. Right. And better relationships and better follow-up, and to really look at every area of your business and take steps out. The simpler, the cleaner to understand, the easier people will buy and support. Absolutely.
Yeah. You got to be in that simplicity type of business all the way through, whether it's, you know, we look back to the first Ford car. Ford made it very simple, just for one person to be able to drive it. And you know, when you look at what we have today with all the other values, but everybody's a simple business when you're in their own mind.
Yeah. No, so simple and yet so powerful.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, this is interesting. Let's talk about competition a little bit and your view. So I'm a very competitive guy. I mean, I believe that, you know, if I'm going to get up and be away from home and travel and, you know, I'm unbelievably competitive. I study everything about our competitors, all of their tools. And I know you're a very competitive guy. To do what you've done, I mean, you absolutely have to be. But we have a mutual friend, you know, much better than I do, but I've met him and had numerous conversations over the years, in Kevin O'Leary, of course. And Kevin's take on competitors is, you know, you should want to pour hot oil in their eyes. And if they don't hate you, then you're not, you know, running a good business. I would love and that's right from his book as well. And we've talked about that. I mean, he is absolutely like kill or be killed. How do you approach when you speak to your franchise owners and there's competitors in your marketplace? What's your mindset? How do you approach that?
I've often taken the view of the other way. I want our competitors to look at us and do some changes, not me change to fit them. I've always thought of my competitors of somebody to make me be better at what I do. So when I opened my first pizza place in Penticton, British Columbia, for me, there was other pizza places there. There were in pool rooms. There was one down the street that was just a one-off pizza place. Well, how do I beat them? I could go over and look at their stuff and say, oh God, he's doing this. I didn't do that. I said, I'm going to be better than anybody else. This is what we're going to do, and we're going to do it well. And to me, I want my competitors to look at us. We opened our first corporate store that we had for training purposes in Dallas, Texas. Everybody told me that we couldn't do the things we're doing. We couldn't have a patio. People didn't go to eat pizza in a patio at that time in the States because it's too hot or too whatever. They didn't sit outside. So I thought, well, we have patios, so why not put a cooling system out there or fans? And all of a sudden, everybody down the road from me came and looked. We're taking pictures of what we'd done, what we did with neon on the outside. So we didn't have enough money to advertise. When I went to Ontario, I did the same thing. So is there competitive? The competitive thing is a great thing for you. It makes you do better. And to me, that's what it's all about. I look at our franchisees and I say to them when we're talking and we have our meetings and stuff, and they said, we'll be better than anybody else. We don't want to match them. We're not chasing them. I don't want to pour burning oil in their eyes or anything like that. Yeah. I love my competitors because they make me work harder.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. So you and I are very much on the same page. So, I mean, every time you get a good competitor, you automatically raise your game. And it makes the industry better. And here's the bottom line. There's always going to be competitors. If you're in a good industry and you've done well, people look at that, they admire it, they respect it, and they're chasing you. And I think that's very good for the average entrepreneur. I think it makes all of us that much better.
It does. And you work harder at it. And, if you're one-off, you think that, you're all by yourself and, you do okay. Mm-hmm. But the minute somebody steps in, it's similar in another business next door to you or 3 doors down, you get sharper and you have to, or you won't be in business. And that's a big thing for me.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because, I know in your business, and it's the same in our business. I mean, there's always those competitors that come in and they're the cheapest model. I mean, you had to battle the whole prolific expansion of 2-for-1 pizzas and lowest cost and discount. And you made a choice and said, we are not competing on price.
Well, the greatest thing we looked at, I remember a very big competitor, and it was in Ontario when we first moved to Ontario to open stores there. And he said, well, you won't make it back here. There's too many of us. And you're just you're a guy from the West. You don't know what's going on back here. And the most amazing thing, when we went in there, he was the guy that won. He said, he came to me and he said, I'll take over your business if you want. And just, you won't do well here. Well, we have I think there's 146 stores in Ontario now. And I said, we've done okay. So yeah, I think that being competitive is I am like you. I am very competitive. I was competitive in football and hockey and everything else. And I'm competitive in this business. I want to be the best I can. And I want our people to be the best. And every community we're in, when you look at it, we've got competitive franchisees that are just feel like us. I mean, that's what the greatest thing with this business I'm in. It's not Jim's Boston Pizza. Yeah. It's franchisees Boston Pizza. And these guys have done extremely well across the country, and they work hard and they got their families involved. And I can give you incident after incident where we were the first one. When we went in and we had all the competitors there ahead of us, we just walked in and said, here's what we're going to do. Mm-hmm. So don't be afraid. Get in and get at it. And that is not,
Yeah, I like what you said before, and you never sort of competed necessarily on price. I mean, obviously you have to be competitive, but you looked at what you were doing best, and you actually built on becoming better, and you looked at what you were doing different, and you highlighted the difference and pointed that out. And it wasn't a race to the bottom. You didn't have to be the cheapest thing, because I can tell you, I mean, the best pizza in North America is Boston Pizza, and the consistency that you have in your stores and the quality has been just phenomenal.
Right. Well, it has, we put ourselves in what we mid casual, we call ourselves. We're not up here, we're not down here, we're right in the middle. And the greatest thing in some of these things that we were talking about the other day, one of the biggest days we had that just passed, and we never, we did a good business around lunchtime, and when the full restaurant was open on Mother's Day, because you either did something for your mother.
Right.
We were absolutely jammed this Mother's Day. Absolutely with takeout and delivery that we couldn't believe it. And what I look at is our franchisees all bought into this. And all we did was one simple thing. What we did for Valentine's Day, we used a heart-shaped pizza. Well, we put a heart-shaped pizza out for Mother's Day, and just for the one day, and we're inundated with across the country. And to me, again, the ingenuity of our franchisees and our people in our office that, led by Jordan Holm, that Jordan has been with me 10 years. And when he took over from Mark Bacinda, I thought, he's going to have a little bit of tough times with this, but he's come full blast. He's right into the business. He loves it. And he does what he did, and he's put a great team together. And that, to me, is what I like about our team. It's our team, and that's what's worked for us.
Well, and there again, I mean, we always speak to, anyone we have influence on and say, the power of those relationships, it is not transactional. And to hear you speak about your team, I mean, this is about the third time on this call that you've, said how amazing they are. And of course they are. And it's largely the reason for so much of your success. But, one of the key things with entrepreneurs is the gratefulness and appreciation of those people that have supported you for many years. So it's lovely to hear that.
Well, like your team, your team is a great team. You guys you're a great leader, and they love being around you. And to me, that's the great thing.
So, here's what I don't understand with you, and it blows my mind. And I mean, God, I really admire it. And it's very simple. I have a friend of mine who's in one of my CEO groups, a very good friend of mine. He was the founder of Remax Worldwide. And I see him in events, and he's much like you. He's the first guy there and last guy to leave. Jim, I said earlier that you have, much like Dave Linegar, you have so much energy. It's incredible, right? Like, I mean, we often run in, we stay at the same place, we're in Toronto at the Shangri-La, and you still have so much. Is there a secret? Was that innate? Like, how do you have that much energy and passion? And you've had it for 48 years.
I know. I don't know. I wished I could bottle it somewhere, because I'd like to keep it till I'm 150. But the most amazing thing is I enjoy what I do. I said for the last 46 years that I've been in business, I've never had a job. This has not been a job. I don't go 9 to 5. I haven't been there 8 to 12, whatever the number is. I came out of a business where it was great, the greatest training I ever had. And what I look back at and look at, I work with some great people. I work with them. They don't work for me. I work with them. And to me, it's been fun going to that business all the time. I can go anywhere in Canada, from Newfoundland to Vancouver Island, and walk into one of the stores and one of the restaurants, and I can turn around and the guy will say, or the girl will say to me, Jim, let's go for lunch, or come on over for dinner tonight. That's what it's all about. To me, it's having the fun to go and meet. And we got people as old as I am in the business, and we've got people that are as young as 21 and 22. And the hardest part of my life was 3, 4, 5 weeks ago when this whole thing started, when we had to lay off 24,000 people across the country, over 24,000 young people. And they're young, and it was just heartbreaking, because I never had to do that before, and I had to do this to say, guys, this is what we have to do. And then we had to tell our franchisees this is what they had to do. And I know there was tears. I mean, it was a tough situation. The good part is we're going to get those people back. They're great people, and we're going to have some of them come back as slowly as when this thing's open again. I think the big thing, the energy is what you got to show when you're people too.
Yeah. Well, I often use this expression, right? You as a leader, our job as a leader is to, be the calming influence through turbulent, times and turbulent waters. And it's like, you don't look, if I was on an aircraft and we were in massive turbulence, I can start freaking out when the stewardess are crying. But until then, I look to them for their calm demeanor, of course. And it's no different in leadership and in business.
Yeah.
And
I think that people look to you, I know, just even a phone call. I try and phone across the country. Every week I phone somebody, and we sit and have a conversation. I phoned one of my guys up in north of Toronto in Muskoka, and I said, yeah, have you got a tea time book for us this afternoon? He says, Jim, it's snowing here. And I said, great, we'll take a skidoo out. Let's go and have, but he's, where are you? And I said, well, I'm in Vancouver. It's a sunny day here. But we laughed, and that to me just breaks the ice. And Mark Torsha is a good friend, and he's got a couple of our units up in northern Ontario. So I think that's the feeling I have, is be able to talk to my franchisees and we have some fun with it.
Yeah, and you're also beloved. I know a friend of mine who, you know, owns at least a couple of units anyway, Dan McEachran, and used to be partnered with Ed Kill out in British Columbia.
Killer.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Killer. Exactly. And Donna and, you know, they just, I mean, you know, you guys have been so involved and that's what it takes, right? As a leader of your business. I mean, you know, it's hard to you know, step away and manage from above. I mean, the power is in the connection. So,
well, you look at guys like Dan McEachran just for a second. Here's a guy that came up through the system. He would work for Ed Kill out in Surrey. Worked in serving on the floor, and now he's got 6 units right now.
Is it 6? Yeah.
In the business, and the son is now telling him, Dan, you have to stay at home for a bit. And we have a lot of laughs with this, because I've never met Dan McEachran when he doesn't have a grin on his face.
Oh, I know.
To me, he's our franchisee that, you know, that's what you're looking for in a franchisee and a business partner.
Yeah.
And that's what he's looking for.
Well, and you know what, and I second that. I see him; he's got a chest iron grin every time, and he's happy. And I don't know. I've been into a lot of Boston pizzas. If you look at me, I've eaten a lot of pizza, and he runs great operations. So very cool. Nice to give him that shout out. So I want to talk to you about what it takes. So, you know, a lot of people look, you know, at someone like you and they go, "Oh my God, he's so successful and he's so wealthy and he's got so much influence," but they don't see the sacrifice, the 60, 80, 90 hours a week in the early days, the being away from your family, the disruption in relationships, you know, the huge hours, the time commitments and sacrifices that honestly are necessary when you are building your business in order to really become exceptional, right? Extraordinary as opposed to ordinary. So talk to us on how you balance that, or do you balance that, Jim, or is that just part of your life for the first few years?
I think it's more than anything, Gary, I think it's part of my life. I've always been somebody that wants to dive in. I have to go full. I have to have both feet in. And I think that part of that was right from the day I went in the mounted police. Everybody told us in those days the training was so tough. It was 10 months and you had to learn how to ride a horse properly and on and on and on. But it was going from 7 to 7 and then being, you know, up at 6:30, 5:30 in the morning just to get ready for the next day. I think part of that was just that pressure all the time for a whole 10 months of training, because they used to say to me, if you think this is tough, wait till you get to the street. And that they were true. If we weren't as tough when we came out, we wouldn't have been who we were. And I think I carried that over into our business. I think that when I went into this business, everybody said, are you crazy? Are you going into business? Think about this. When I went through to talk to my dad, he sat there and I had to borrow $5,000 from him to get into business. And I explained for 2 hours what I was doing. And he said, let me get this straight. You're going into business with a bunch of Greeks selling Italian food in a Penticton, British Columbia, where they're dead or nearly dead. And he said, you want me to lend you money? And I said, yes, Dad, I just need the hand. He said, no, you need a damn psychiatrist. And that was how I started. I mean, the next day he went to the bank and signed a note for me to get the $5,000. If he hadn't have done that, and he was a cash guy, and he was so upset that I was leaving the outfit to go to this. And when I look back over the years, before he passed away, you got to see a little bit of what happened and how the changes. And the first words out of his mouth every time with me was, you missed the police force. Dad, I love this business. And he still couldn't get the word peace out of his head, you know. But again, he was that type of person as well. He went to work every day, worked hard through tough times when he said, you know, through the depression, and he told these stories to us. So I think that was the DNA that was in me.
Well, so let's just talk about that for a minute, because one of the quotes that you know you coined or had in one of your books that really also resonated with me: if you never change your mind, why have one?
That's
right. I thought that was so powerful, because there's so many people, and we see it in our business and you see it in yours. I mean, there's so many people that have been raised, you know, with parents who went to work, you know, with government jobs, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. And they've sort of like, you know, there's immense pressure to, you know, like just get a good job, you know, raise your family, have 2 dogs and a couple kids, you know, go to your church on Sunday. and they're just so terrified of entrepreneurship, and you have to push back, and it's okay to find your own way, but it's a society, and it's getting better, of course, but society actually frowns about, like, I made my decision, I made my bed, now I got to sleep in it. And the nice thing about having free will is the ability to change your mind.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that that's a big thing. I think that's, there's not everybody's going to be an entrepreneur. Let's face it. There are people, like very, very successful people that have gone into big corporations and then done extremely well and have worked for big corporations. And I think you have to have a mix of that. We can't all be entrepreneurs, because we wouldn't have anybody get the work done. But what we have to look at is what you're good at, and how good are you at what you like and what you like to do. I've said this business over and over again. I love what I do. And when I talk to a potential franchisee, all my first question is to them, if you're not happy with beating around people, then this is the wrong business. Right. So when I look at the businesses I'm in and entrepreneurs and anybody that comes into business, I love being around people that are positive. I love people that are hardworking. And these are the kind of people you want to be with. These are the people I want to be with. And that's what keeps me young. When I look at all the young people working in there, I think, wow, this is fine. I don't even think about my age. An experience happened to me when I thought one day that I was going to semi-retire. This was about 10 years ago. I was in Hawaii. I'd gone over because I was mad about doing something that happened here. And I went over to take a couple of days off. And I said to my partner at that time, I said, George, I'm going to go back. I'm going to make a change. And you know what? I got over there for a week, and there was 3 guys I was golfing with, all older than I was. And all they did was complain about their back and their sore and this, and for 3 days. And I got back on the plane. I was supposed to be there for 3 weeks. And I came back after 5 days. I said, you know what? If that's retirement, I'm out of it. I'm over that thing. So, and I think those are the greatest things that you have with entrepreneurs, that we see these young guys coming in the business now, and that just gives you a whole new life for a person like me.
Yeah, no, it's so when you look at these young entrepreneurs, or when you're, looking at a budding entrepreneur, when you're sitting on Dragon's Den, what key qualities are you looking for in those entrepreneurs?
Well, I think number one, they know their business, and have they tested it before? We're not on there to look at you for ideas. We're there to see your business. That's what you're investing in. So if I make an investment, I want to know if I fire a bunch of questions at you, or anybody else in the panel does, I want to see how you react to those. Have you tried your product with people to make sure that the people want to buy this thing? So once you've done that, and it's the same thing was when I went into business, the one pizza shop that was doing really well was the Greek place called Boston Pizza and Spaghetti House. And when I was taken there for the first time, I'd never eaten a pizza in my life. Yeah. So the thing was that when I look at all of those kind of people, when you're doing any business deal, the second thing I look more than anything is, how would they react with me saying to you, we want to change this, we want to do this to make it better? Would you listen to me, or am I just there for you to throw some cash in? If you need that, you might as well go to the bank, or somebody just got a bunch of cash, doesn't care what you want to do. So that's what I look at is to make sure that, can you answer the questions properly about your business you're going into or have started? The second thing is, are you going to listen to somebody else about their opinion of what you might be able to change, or give me reasons why we shouldn't do that?
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting. So, know your business. I mean, cold, obviously you can't come in looking to partner with, one of the Dragons without that. And then it's interesting because your point about taking feedback. I mean, I get a ton of people who regularly ask, for some coaching or mentoring, and, and when I do it, the only thing I ever say is that, I'm happy to do it. Jim is happy we're all happy to, to help out, others, because we've been very fortunate and, through the generosity of so many others. But if I give you advice, you have to take the advice, because I need you to do something great with it. Yeah. I want to give you advice and you won't freaking listen. All of a sudden you're going to argue with me on, no, we're not going to do this. We're not changing.
Well, if you're going to be into a fight every time, you don't need this. And you don't have time to mentor in the sense of being there. You can't sit beside them and do their business. Right. They've got to be able to understand. We look at it. I have a team that we all look at these things every day. It's not me that make a decision whether we do this or that in our business, no different than I do with their business. If I walked in and said, here's what you should do, and I think this would work, try this, let's see where it goes. and the reasons behind it. And that's the mentorship you have. I mean, talking with even the people at Steep Tea, I'll never forget they're working out of their garage and their mother's basement and so on and so forth. And we said, we got to get this out of there. And I remember Chelly and I saying, we got to get into a warehouse. And they said, well, I can't afford it. And we said, well, that isn't the question. Is you're going to build your business. We have to do. We'll make it work. Let's go. But you got to get in the warehouse. And then you got to get proper equipment. And you can't be doing it this way because you'll never grow. You haven't got the space to grow. So, and you look at that thing today, the warehouse we took over, I think was at the first time was about 3,000 feet. Now we're at 100,000 feet. So
you're kidding me.
You know, it's just the growth is there if you just give the opportunities to the people. And that to me is the mentorship. It's not every day sitting beside you and say, well, you have to do this, you have to do that. That doesn't work.
Yeah. No kidding. So when you talk about, you know, giving that feedback and, you know, providing direction and wanting to help people, you know, in many ways, I mean, it's coaching or mentoring. What have you done over the years, Jim? Was there somebody, like, how did you've always had this keen desire to learn. You're a lifelong learner, of course. Where did you get your, you know, was there a mentor for you, or was it just immersing yourself around other business owners, or how did you, you know, rise to the acumen that you have when it comes to Canadian business, North American business for now?
Well, I think we all start, and I look back at myself, we started with one pizza place. And we thought, if we can make that successful, and I remember in the back pounding pizza every morning, putting in the pan to put them away and following the system that we were taught. And there was only, at that time, I was the third store to open. The other two were owned by the franchisee and or franchisor. And when we looked at that, I kept going every morning thinking, I don't want to keep doing this. You know, if I have to keep doing this, and then I had another guy show when we got busier. So I had another guy I showed him what to do. And I thought, well, maybe if I got another store. Now, I hadn't paid for the first one yet, but boy, if we got two of these going, then I wouldn't have to do this. So I worked myself out of a job is basically what I did by putting in people like that. And to me, that's how it starts. When you looked at fast forward 46 years later, and I'm on on a show, and a guy is talking to me about, I've got a bunch of I got a truck here, and I think we can go to mobile bike shop, and I can take it out to your house instead of you taking it to your place of business. And I thought, oh, great form of franchising. He said, I don't know about franchising. I said, I know about franchising. You know about your business. Let's see if we can do it. So that's what we do. Now we've got 180 trucks on the road.
Relafix, what a great business that was. Yeah. I followed it closely. I remember I in the early days saw them riding around Vancouver. Just an awesome brand. And
they're a great brand, and they you know, they worked it. The young fellow that designed the inside of that truck was 21 years old. I mean, mind-boggling. But that's working with those young guys, and they're fired up. You're fired up. The sad part is the year goes by too quick, and the next year goes by too quick. I wished I had another 80 more years of these. But.
Yeah. Well, you never know. I don't know. You got a lot of people fooled, because I think you might, Jim, it, as I keep, you know, saying, just your commitment and your energy is
it's
a
fun awesome part of the business. And I think that's what I look towards. And talking to other people, like talking to other successful people, Jimmy Pattison in this town, I got to know Jimmy through Expo 86 when we went in there. And I remember him coming into our office and putting his feet up on the table. He's a little league guy. And he turned to me and said, you know, how are we going to get this deal done? And I said, well, Jimmy, we can't afford that. And he said, we're not talking about that. You guys, we want you there. How are we going to make this work? And we did. We made it work. All of a sudden, we're in there, did huge numbers, got on the national stage, and who would have thought? But he was the guy that really I look up to. And when I say, look at what he did with coming from Saskatchewan with a one-car dealership in Vancouver.
Yeah.
I mean, here's a guy that's mind-boggling. So you meet people like that, and you get to meet other successful people. And like I said, I had a chance to meet with Warren Buffett a couple of times. And the most amazing thing with this guy is, you know, it's positivity all the time. You enthusiastic. There's no, and we all make mistakes.
Right.
Don't think we're the brightest bulbs in the world. And, you know, there's things we don't do right, and we have to change, but you learn from your mistakes. Don't do them the second time. And that's really bad.
Yeah, no kidding. I love the story, you know, about the World's Fair Expo 86. And, you know, of course, you guys had just been expanding, and you had just, you know, brought in, you know, some outside partners, and it was early days for you, and they wanted $1 million to be in this, you know, this short-term World's Fair.
6 months.
right, for 6 months, and you were terrified, and you originally turned them down. And then of course,
Yeah.
Jimmy and them came back to you. They
Yeah.
really wanted an icon. They really wanted like Canadian homegrown,
That's
sort of
exactly what it was. And Jim,
brands. And then it started off with what, 30 Days of Rain or something before.
yeah, I'll never forget it. I still got my little books because remember I came out of the police force, so I wrote down the time of the date and everything. I wrote around the train every day, every morning. There was nobody at the fair, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh. And I kept thinking, well, we borrowed $1 million from my partners. I guess it'll take me 10 years to pay this off or through our business. So, but we went about till it was the 9th of July, if I can remember right now. But on the 9th of July, the clouds broke, the rain quit, and we went 56 days without a drop of rain in Vancouver, which is unheard of, and sunshine. And the people came from everybody seemed to think in July or middle of July on, this thing's going to be over in a couple of months, and I'm going to get there. And we were unbelievable. We thought we would end up trying to have to pay the loan off, and we ended up doing, I think it was $22 million for the 6 months.
I know there were some days you were doing, $250,000, $300,000 a day per unit in pizza.
Yeah. Yeah. It was unbelievable.
What I like best about
that hard work, and we had great people working with us. We'd hired a bunch of people, and there was times when we thought, oh my gosh, is this going to work? But you had to keep positive even through the rain. We'd be up 10 pizzas and we'd say, oh, that's great. Let's keep going,
What I love best about that story, and the actual learning piece about that story, is that you said, if you're going to fail big. So when everyone in the pavilion, all the food services, all the people that were in there, your competitors, they had all said, oh my God, we're getting our asses handed to us. And they had all cut their staff and had skeleton crews. And you guys said, no, we're in for a penny, we're in for a pound. We're going to keep all these people on, because if it does turn, and you were one of the rare people that did that. So of course it did turn. Yeah, and there's really 7 or 8 million more attendance than they had thought would go through there.
Yeah.
And because your idea was to fail big if you're going to fail, and in this case you didn't. I mean, it was a decision.
The word fail was not in our vocabulary at that time. What we thought is, we could know how we were going to pay it out, but that was the easy part, or not the easy part, but the time that we would do it. But we knew that if this happened, if it started to come, and when it came in droves. And I think the biggest thing is understanding we had guys like Jimmy and believing in this whole thing, and he put some great people in charge of that as well. So we were having a great time putting this all together, and we were not thinking of failing. It was feeling, how do we get to the end? So that's what you got to think about all the time. Failure, I'm not a big fan with. I think you can make mistakes and change, but change it around to make it work.
Yeah, well, I think we'll all agree that, through hard times, provide the most inspiring opportunities. We learn so much, right? I want to talk to you a little bit about partnerships. George, your partner for more than 40 years. He's retired now, only 2.5 or 3 years ago. But I know that relationship was one of the most, strongest, relationships I've seen. There was so much chemistry, and you talk about a good partner, and what do you look for in a partner? What made it great?
I think the biggest thing with George and I, we go back to when he's my accountant in Penticton. And then I offered him a job to come to work for us to leave Pete Marwick. And he had to go and tell his father he was leaving a great company with a partnership involved, to go in with a bunch of pizza guys. And he had probably the same explanation I had to make. But George was, the practicality with him was all the practicality piece that I needed. He was the sort of the guy that I could run stuff off of, and he would never say, no, God, would get into a fight. We never had an argument. We had a discussion. And I'd say, and he came to me one day and he said, Jim, you're off to the moon. I just want to go halfway. So can we back off a little bit on this deal before we do this or this? And that was George. He was my partner for 46 years. And he went out the same way when he came in. He just came in one day, and we're sitting at a convention, and I was at a meeting with the FAC and all our franchisees, and I said, I don't like the way that's doing. I'm going to change it. We want to change this, and this is what we're going to do. And we broke for coffee, and he called me over, and he sat me down on the outside the hotel lobby thing that we're having a meeting with, and he said, I don't want to do this anymore. And I said, neither do I. I just told him that we don't want to do this. And he said, no, you're not listening, Jim. I don't want to do this. I want to get out. So I want to take my time and go and do things. And I said, great. You know, we left the same way as we got into it. And he was a super, super partner. I mean,
Yeah.
I can't, like I said, we'd had discussions about doing something, and he would say, if I'd be sitting in a meeting and he'd say, I'd like to look at that again, I knew enough to back off. So we had that relationship. And we went to lunch every day for 25, 30 years. I mean, you know, he was just that kind of a guy, and he was a friend, you know, and that was a friend before he was a partner.
Yeah, that's the exact same dynamic that Chris and I, other than the last couple, you know, months, have had lunch every single day for 14 years now or something. And we get so much done, you know. So in your case, it was the old proverbial, you've never fought over who gets the last slice of pizza.
No,
right?
no. He liked one different. His was always different than mine.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think the other thing that you've said in the past is that no one ever kept score, right? Like no one ever looked and said, well, I think you're working more than me, or you're, you know what? And that was pivotal to, you know, the relationship.
I have a deal. I used to walk around the offices all the time, and it was part of, I don't know whether it was in the police force we did it, but I used to walk by all the offices every day. I'd come in and say hello to everybody, and I still do that to this day. And I'll go to restaurants. I go and see the cooks at the back before I see anybody else, you know, at the front. And I remember going by George's office when he first came to work, and I was getting ready to go home, and it was about 7:30 at night. And I said, I said, George, how come you got all this stuff piled up? You need some more people. And he said, no, I'm okay. I'm just working through. And I said, look at my desk. There's nothing on it because I passed it off. And he said, I never thought of that. So next week I came in, he hired another accountant. And all of a sudden his desk was cleared. But, you know, it was by walking around and asking questions, and that's how we got along. I mean, he thought he was doing a great job. He never thought he was snowed under. He enjoyed it. But when I start seeing stuff pile up in your desk, I know you got a problem.
Yeah, incredible. What an incredible story.
He had a great friend.
Yeah, of course. I want to speak to you about sort of community involvement and service and the charity work that you and Sandy do. I want to speak about, obviously, you know, CAMH, the Center for Addiction and Mental Health. You're an advisor. You know, Sandy is obviously a director and has been very pivotal in that. You know, you and I, or Sandy and I, and you, we share the same thing. We have, you know, schizophrenia and mental illness in our family. We've all been through it, and we know how insidious it is. How important is that work around CAMH and all the other charity work that you do, and how important it is for a business owner of any size to get involved in their community?
Well, you know, way back when George and I were just getting going, we started a golf tournament, and that's how it really got started in our charity, Boston Pizza Foundation, which has morphed into looking after our kids and stuff like this. But he hired my daughter when I was living in Texas to run our foundation to drive it higher. We had to get out of just being a golf tournament with raising $20,000-$30,000. So my daughter Cheryl come into the business, and who had left university, or had left the government after she left university. And one time she wanted to be a model policeman. I said, no, they don't treat women quite as nice as us. So she ended up taking our charities to a big piece more than we were. That was the first start. And when Sandy and I got involved, Sandy's family had, her brother suffered from schizophrenia.
Same as mine.
And it was something that we'd been looking at all charities, and we were living in Toronto at the time. And then we moved to Dallas, and then we started going back and forth. And then what really turned her around was we could do something with this. And I didn't know any of the address stuff or where CAMH was anything about. She spent their whole time on this. She looked at this and researched it. And it was 4 or 5 people that got into this whole thing of raising funds and doing stuff and building it up. And she explained the CAMH to me. And it's the most amazing thing that those people have put together, and what she has done with her group to fundraise for pushing CAMH to the forefront. And we're going to see a lot of that in the next few months after this pandemic. That there's people suffering really badly through this time. from whether it's being no money, it's doing stuff that are happening, your anxiety is growing. So we may be in a pandemic of mental illness at the end of this, both in the United States and Canada. And there's people suffering out every day with this. So when we got involved with it, it was just not ourselves. It was, Bell got involved with it. We got to meet those people from there. We got to see all the different aspects of what was going on. My nephew committed suicide with my gun that I'd given him, as something to use for hunting. My sister was devastated. So again, that was a mental illness. At 16, this kid was the brightest thing, and you see all this stuff going on. You have to do something. And so that was our push. We got involved with our charities, with Boston Pizza Foundation, and we pushed 4 charities there. We got involved with the Rick Hansen Foundation. He was a big piece of that. Kids Help Phone Line. All part of this is part of our charity giving. And it's the old story of giving back. I mean, I've often said, I was told by my parents when I was growing up, my dad used to say, you'll never see a Brinks truck following a hearse because you can't take it with you.
Right.
So you better be able to look at this whole thing and say, you've done really well. You've looked after your family. Everything's going well. You give back. And that's what we're doing. I fully believe in this thing. I think it's a big piece of our life. And my wife has done fantastic work with this. She is the pusher on this whole thing in my mind. She's a director. She's there. She's talking to, we got a great president running CAMH down there, and she's doing a great job of all this stuff. All these things are building to expand it, in every avenue we can. And I think it's big talk about this happening for everybody. Charities, every franchise person that we know, and every person I know in the business world, if you don't get into giving back, then you're not part of the community in my mind.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I want to just sincerely, with complete gratefulness, thank you for the good work you and Sandy do. I mean, Sandy is just an absolute saint. And, I'm talking about mental health and right now, I mean, there is such a rise in it during this pandemic. My own brother, who, I've looked after for a lot of years now, who's a wonderful, wonderful individual, is in my house right now and has been for the last 2.5 weeks because, he went through a period where we figured out after, 45 days, he hadn't gotten out of bed. He was 45 days in bed and just spiraled into a dark secret, couldn't get out there. His one exit was the odd restaurant here and there. And and he just, now we got to get him out of that situation and get him back where he's feeling good. He's starting to turn the corner again. But he'll be with me again for, the next 3 or 4 weeks or whatever it is, and it is the nice thing about Bell and about CAMH and about the work that you and Sandy are doing is a lot of the stigma around mental illness seems to be evaporating. Like people know that, hey, listen, this isn't remote. I mean, everyone has it in their family in one way or another. So I just really want you to know how grateful we all are for all the work that you guys do around this.
Well, I think it's a big thing too, Gary. And I think it's the one thing we got to remember with this, and I saw it in the police force. I was talking to the commissioner and all police about it. And it's you're not alone. The hard part is we think that the old days were lock everybody away, don't say anything. It was like a jail. Not now. You got to get it open. You got to get talking to people. And I've had friends of mine and people that I sit there and I'll be looking at them for a minute and I'll say, "You're really feeling Nancy. You're feeling yeah. Well, yeah, Jim, a little bit." And I said, "No, there's not a little bit. It's either you're in or you're feeling really tough." Well, tell me what you're taking. Let's talk. And that was what started this whole thing. Let's talk and let's get it out. Don't be shy. I mean, I keep looking at the slogan, mental illness is health. It's part of our whole being, and we got to make sure that we look after that. Just no different. You have a broken arm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's something we have to. I fully believe in it, and I think that everybody should get involved. And you're going to see bigger and bigger things happening with CAMH.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you for the amazing work. Just a few more minutes, and we'll kind of wind down here. Just sort of a rapid fire round. I know that we were talking about books offline and, you love anything Warren Buffett and you love biographies. you had said you got the book on your desk right now is, you want to hold it up? Brass and Unity by Kelsey Sheridan.
Yeah, my wife brought this to me. Brass and Unity, right there.
Awesome. My story of war, PTSD, and finding the light. Thank you. We always get our guests to recommend a book and find out what's on their desk right now. So, Jim, what is all the years later, and you're still hungry? What is the best thing about becoming successful?
I think being able to give back and have fun with that. I think having fun with our people, that's a big thing. Traveling to see other businesses in other countries and see how they operate. There's a whole world of education out there. And I've said to my kids, and we say to my Sandy's kids and my kids and all my kids and grandchildren, go and see the world and see what the rest of the world, and you'll think how good we have it here. And I think the thing you can change is yourself. Fit into the world that we're living in now, and show them how you can change this world. And the new generation, I have all the belief in the world that they're coming through, and they're going to be way smarter than we are, and quicker and faster. And they're proving it every day with the stuff we're doing right now.
Yeah, no kidding. Pretty incredible. This is just a quick one, but if you could boil it down, the single greatest attribute you admire in people?
Integrity.
Yeah.
I think the integrity of people, to me, it's all about your integrity when we do anything. And to me, that's one word I think is a big piece of how we operate.
Yeah, incredible. And your favorite pizza at Boston Pizza?
Oh, that's a tough one. I like the Meteor, which is an all meat type pizza. Cool. And the other one that I love is a Tuscan. And I try to eat 1 or 2 of those a week. So that's why I went from a 30 waist to a 38 waist. So but we have a lot of fun, and I feel healthy with it. And our food is great and fantastic.
Excellent. Well, you know what? And it is incredible. And I look at the company right now, and I look at, like all companies right now, the impact on your share price. And just so you know, I have been buying for months, all the way down. And, it's an institution here in Canada. You've done incredible work. We are going to do something today. The first 50 people that post on my Facebook timeline and mention Jim Treliving or Boston Pizza, my assistant Tara is going to send you out 50 of you a $25 gift certificate to Boston Pizza, so you can have a pizza on us. And we just really want to thank you, Jim, for being our guest and for everything that you do and your generosity with your time. And I really want Sandy to know just how inspirational we all think she is. I've had many conversations with Sandy over the years, and I know how hard she works. And they often say behind any good man is a good woman. And man, is that true in your case? Yeah, she's like 2 of them. It's a good thing, because she keeps me straight. That's why I'm young. That's why I keep young. She's unbelievable. She's been great. The kids have been great. The grandchildren, she's missing badly right now, but they're across the other side of the country and in the U.S. But that's part of the world here. So she's been fantastic and great partner to work with. Okay, I got to tell you, I've had so many people on my Zoom chat on the side of my screen that have said, "Oh my God, he's so inspirational," and I've known him for years, and I've worked for Dan McEachran and The Best Pizza. I have a thread of just incredible positive comments about you and our call today. Before I wrap, guys, for next week, I want to just take a minute before we say goodbye to Jim. And I want to remind you that next Thursday at 11 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, my guest is a gentleman by the name of Lewis Howes. Lewis Howes is the founder and curator of the lewishowes.com is his website, of the School of Greatness. He is an entrepreneur. His podcasts have had more than, I think, almost 50 million views now. He's been on Ellen Good Morning America. He's just an incredible guest. So please tune in again next week for Lewis Howes. If you want to find out more about him in the meantime, lewishowes.com. In a couple weeks, also, one of our next guests is Brian Scudamore from 1-800-GOT-JUNK, another good Canadian, Vancouver boy. He's going to talk about what he's done in the world of franchising. And one of the things that I want to just say really quickly, because I think it's important, when I reached out to Jim and said, "Hey, Jim, would you mind, joining me on this call?" It was a matter of minutes. Jim just said, "Sure, Gare, would love to." And it's funny because the more successful people become, it always seems, the more giving they are. And I don't know if it's because giving starts to receiving, or if that's, a key or the secret to success, Jim. But, any of our friends that we've met over the years, and, you're all really busy, and we reach out and we ask them, but Gary, I'd love to. You want to just touch on that as a wrap?
I think it's because of the friendship we have. You build it with a person like yourself. Then you and I met through, we're talking
Kevin, I think originally, and Rich, yeah.
Really, Kevin, and I said, that you'd helped him out to get to the stage he was at when he came on Dragon's Den. You're talking about Skidmore. He came on Dragon's Den as well, and great guy, great entrepreneur.
Yeah.
But those are the things that you and I, and what I think are you build friendships with, and you don't lose those. And to me is just being able to do this. This is fantastic. I never thought I'd be doing this kind of thing. So you got me into a whole new realm here, and this is
wow. And you're so good at it, Jim. Oh my God. Like, you're just so good at it. And you just, as I said before, you have so much incredible experience. So listen, with that, guys, we'll wrap. Please, guys, tag us on social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. Please, on behalf of all of us, Jim and Sam, please accept our sincere gratitude for the amazing work you do, and for the time, the generous, amount of time you've given us today. Jim, I'll reach out to you off the air here. But thank you very, very much for being our guest today.
Thanks, Gary. I appreciate it. Really enjoyed it.
Okay. Talk to you soon. Thanks very much. Thanks, guys. See you next Thursday. Bye-bye.